Oliver's behavior continued to oscillate unpredictably. Moments of the man she loved, warm and reassuring, were abruptly interrupted by cold, distant gazes and an unsettling aloofness. Grace watched with growing trepidation as a subtle darkness seemed to loom over Oliver's interactions, a shadow encroaching upon the light of their reunion. Meanwhile, the town enveloped itself in a collective mourning for the lives lost in Lockhaven. The community gathered to honor those who perished, offering a plethora of condolences and prayers. A veil of sorrow enshrouded Crestwood, the tragedy a stark reminder of life's fragility. Oliver, forced into attendance, stood as an echo of the grief around him. Each mention of lost life pricked his conscience. They were more than just names. They represented a connection to a fragmented part of himself, silhouetted whispers in the pandemonium of his mind. Throughout these days of reflection and sorrow, the strange notes from James continued their unnerving cadence. They concluded with a chilling invitation, "Meet me where it all began." The veiled reference to the school sent a jolt through Oliver's core. He recognized the need to confront this entity head-on, to challenge this presence that threatened to usurp his sanity. With the burden of the mystery weighing heavily on her heart, Grace stood by her husband, willing her strength to be his bastion. They delved into the remnants of family albums, searching for untainted memories, hopeful to rekindle the connection strained by recent events and the lurking danger within their midst. The afternoon sun cast its tepid glow on the Kane home, the shadows elongating into the early signs of evening. Oliver stood at the threshold of his office, an unsettling sense of trespassing in his domain clouding his expression. Before him, on the mahogany desk, a neat stack of notes lay splayed, each scrawled with the enigmatic insights of the other he knew as James. Memories, like fractured glass, reflected distorted images as he processed the content, confessions of malice and meticulous recounts of unspeakable acts. From the depths of each note, James' presence unfurled, a malignant specter clawing at the vestiges of Oliver's psyche. Grace watched from across the hallway, her heart a repository of worry and support. Since the discovery of the notes, Oliver had retreated into a shell oscillating between denial and reluctant acceptance of the too real possibility of dual natures residing within him. Each message, a brush with malice carefully planned and executed, sent shivers down Grace's spine. Yet, her resolve to stand by Oliver solidified further, propelling her to broach the silence that had claimed their evenings. She ventured steps into the office, a compassionate hand extended toward her partner adrift in the tumultuous sea of his fragmented self. In Crestwood, the shadow of James' terror crept subtly through the everyday life of townsfolk, whispers of the Lockhaven poisoning painting sinister strokes against the backdrop of communal routines. Each mention of the incident in hushed tones bore an implicit question, a cautious intrigue about the root of such evil. Oliver's introspection yielded a determination to confront the malevolent side of himself, born from the revelations etched into the weighty paper. Compelled by a quest for justice for his son and the lost souls of Lockhaven, he garnered strength from the very depths of the fractured bonds of his being. In Crestwood, the change of seasons brought a crispness to the air, a semblance of change that was both literal and metaphorical. Within the heart of the community, the whispers of an invisible menace stretched like tendrils through the residents' conscience, shadows lengthening with the ebbing daylight. For Oliver, the realization loomed like a specter over every wakeful moment, the notes from James, his convoluted alter ego, sparking an unease that bordered on terror. Sunlight filtered through the windows, its brilliance unable to reach the darkness that was increasingly gnawing at his core. In the sanctity of their home, Grace witnessed a transformation, the man she knew receding like the tide before a tsunami. Each note revealed a plotted detail, symptomatic of a fractured psyche that Oliver struggled to reconcile with. Grace's heart ached at his torment, yet she was anchored by a conviction that the man she loved remained, buried underneath the turmoil of his internal clash. Crestwood's quaint normalcy was contradicted by a growing discomfort among its people, a communal tension evoked by the unsolved mystery and the dread of the unseen, personified in the elusive figure of James. Suspicion cast a glacial patina over social interactions, an undercurrent of unease usurping the town's warmth. Despite the chilling certainty of the notes, Oliver was driven by a singular intent, to face the darkness he inadvertently harbored and seek out James. The vague message to meet at the origin of their shared affliction, the school, was both an invitation and a dare, a turning point that Oliver, in his newfound resolve, couldn't ignore. With the gathering dusk, Oliver resigned from his usual evening routine. Setting the notes aside, he replaced them with a resolve to confront his shadows head-on. The air around him carried the electrifying pulse of impending confrontation, the mark of a man on the brink of his most profound and ominous realization. The thickening gloom of an overcast evening mirrored Oliver's somber determination as he embarked on a journey to unearth the truth behind James's notes. The realization of his fragmented existence, a duality encompassing both his familiar self and an ominous stranger, had driven him to quiet introspection, culminating in a purposeful resolve to seek answers about his sinister alter ego. Grace observed Oliver's preparation with a cocktail of emotions swirling within her: fear, support, empathy. She watched as he donned his coat, the lines of his face scribing a story of quiet courage and internal tumult. With every fiber of her being, she longed to share his burden, to unravel the twisted machinations of the being that threatened their peace. In the twilight hour, Oliver found himself at the gates of Crestwood Elementary, the hallowed grounds that birthed his trauma and James's heinous acts. The surroundings were haunting in their deserted stillness, but it was here amidst the echoes of children's laughter that James had promised to confront Oliver with the harrowing truths of their shared soul. The schoolyard, empty and silent, felt like a canvas wiped clean of the innocence it once celebrated. Here, among swings that no longer swayed and slides that no longer gleamed with the touch of playful hands, Oliver felt the chilling grip of James's presence in the recesses of his fragmented mind, taunting him with its gloomy silence. As night stretched her dark cloak over Crestwood, Oliver's every sense sharpened to the unnerving stillness of the empty school. His steps echoed through the halls, a metronome ticking down to the inevitable meeting. Each note's confession replayed in his mind, painting a vivid picture of anarchy that James had choreographed with diabolical precision. The confrontation with James loomed at the forefront of his thoughts, a magnetic pull toward the answers he so desperately sought. The desolation of Crestwood Elementary mirrored the desertion in Oliver's spirit, setting the stage for a fateful encounter that promised to either consolidate his fragmented self or shatter it entirely. Darkness had settled over Crestwood like a shroud as Oliver navigated the shadows of the elementary school's hallways. Each step was half expected to summon James from the veil of silence, to bring forth the entity that had wreaked havoc on his life and the lives of others. With every unlit classroom he passed, Oliver's anticipation mounted. The notes had been explicit about meeting where it all started, yet the school stood quiet, devoid of any sign of James. It dawned on Oliver that perhaps James was more specter than substance, a fragmented piece of his own psyche that he had personified yet could never truly separate himself from. Meanwhile, Grace, watching the solemn day dip into night, was ensconced at home in a vigil of concern. She had spent hours interleaving her memories with the frantic scribbles from James' notes, trying to reconciliate the man she knew with the hidden one who threatened to surface. The night grew deeper, cradling Crestwood in a hush akin to breath-holding. The community, unaware, lay powerless against the capricious whims of a fragmented mind on the hunt for his invisible tormentor. For them, James was but a name whispered amidst the shifting winds, a lingering enigma tied to Oliver's innocence. The search for James became a metaphysical hunt for Oliver. Each corner turned a dive deeper into his consciousness, a plunge into the icy waters of self-discovery. The school, a mausoleum of memories both sweet and tragically sour, echoed back his own fears, amplifying the urgency for answers that might never come. The witching hour approached, and with it a deepening cold that seeped through the empty corridors of Crestwood Elementary. Oliver's sole presence in the building felt both intrusive and intensely personal, a lone soul amidst the deafening silence of confrontation delayed. An unsettling calm had taken over the town of Crestwood, the residents peacefully nestled in their beds, while Oliver wrestled with the chilling dread that James might not be a physical adversary after all. The truth was beginning to crystallize within his tormented mind, a realization that the James he sought to confront was not a man lurking in the literal shadows, but rather the figurative darkness clinging to his own fractured spirit. Back home, with a lonely vigil casting long shadows across the walls, Grace found herself rereading the notes. Each entry revealed a further troubling insight into James's twisted intentions and disturbing clarity of thought. It chilled her to the bone, confronting the duality within Oliver, a man she loved who harbored an indiscernible monster. The hours waned, and Oliver's search within the school grew desperate. Each room scrutinized under the beam of his flashlight revealed more of his anxiety, a reflection of the tumult within. Yet, James remained an intangible terror, a phantom evading capture, forged in the fires of Oliver's inner conflict. As morning threatened to break on the horizon, Oliver's exhaustive hunt yielded no confrontation, no catharsis, and no James. Instead, it served as a soul-rending journey into his deepest recesses, where Oliver discovered that James, the saboteur of his innocence and the orchestrator of heinous acts, was a creation of his own splintered mind, a devastating avatar of pain, fear, and repressed rage. As the cold light of dawn began to trickle into the desolate halls of Crestwood Elementary, Oliver's futile quest culminated in a chilling encounter. Standing in the same classroom where it all began, he finally came face to face with his other self, James. A reflection in the smudged glass of the trophy case revealed a man nearly identical to him, yet wholly alien, a sinister doppelganger born from the abyss of his fragmented mind. The visage staring back at Oliver bore a malevolent smirk that twisted his familiar features into a mask of malevolence. "Hello, Oliver," the reflection, James, whispered with acrimony lacing every syllable. "You took your sweet time." Grace, in the comfort of their home, ached with a sense of impending dread. She was aware of the magnitude of Oliver's journey, one that stretched beyond the physical hunt for a hidden foe. It was a venture into the haunting battlefield of his mind, a standoff with a shadow that had tainted their lives with inexplicable grief. As Oliver grappled with the reality of James's being, a mirror image sharing every physical attribute but polar opposite in essence, the classroom around him seemed to contort, reality warping at the edges of his consciousness. James's presence, though non-physical, bore down with an oppressive force, a paralyzing injunction that Oliver couldn't escape. Each word from James cut deep into Oliver's soul, a razor-wire narrative of their diverging paths since childhood. The Phantom boasted a litany of betrayals, subtly reveling in the dark chaos he'd sown, an eloquent recount of their inner divergence, from the tender innocence of youth to the merciless calculation of their adult divergence. The palpable tension mounted as James outlined the meticulous coldness of his plans, the pointed barbs of machinations that had led to his dominance over Oliver's actions, culminating in the inexplicable tragedy at Lockhaven. Oliver, compelled to listen, was caught between revulsion and recognition, understanding that James was as much a part of him as his shadow, a dark echo that could never be fully silenced or contained. In the silent confrontation with his reflection, Oliver came to the unbearable realization that he was irrevocably yoked to this specter of malevolence. The irreversible encounter with James plucked at threads woven from fear and comprehension within Oliver. His world had been affected by the realization of the insidious presence within him, an echo of his own existence that was as real as it was phantasmal. Haunted by the experience, he watched Crestwood come to life with the dawn. He returned home, every step carrying the weight of unsaid words and troubling truths. His confrontation with James made a profound impact, for through that spectral reflection, a portal closed, settling a chilling conclusion. James was a part of him, a looming shadow woven seamlessly into his essence. Meanwhile, Grace paced relentlessly, the anxiety of her husband's absence having kept her in a sleepless vigil. Her eyes brightened as Oliver's key turned in the lock, but the relief was fleeting as she took in his expression, wrenched by a torment her empathy could not assuage. Oliver's silence rang loud in the threadbare quiet of their home as the couple struggled to fathom the depth of the abyss before them. Grace found her strength in silence, allowing Oliver the space to grapple with the cacophony within him. In the days following the confrontation, Crestwood reeled under the unsolved mysteries of their shared past. The former scapegoat, Fred, languished in prison, bearing the weight of accusations and disgust from the townfolks. All the while, unbeknownst to them, the true puppeteer of their grief walked free. In the end, Oliver's reflection was his reality, his curse, a bleak mirror showing the visage of James, the enigma born out of his split psyche. The story of Oliver Kane drew to an unsettling conclusion, one that carried in its depths a macabre revelation. James, born from the remnants of tragedy, was free to roam in the anonymity amongst them,